The next item on the agenda is oral communications from the public. Is there any public here that would like to speak? Love it. That was cute. Okay, the next item on the agenda is Student of the Month.
Oh, you don't have chair comments on there. You're right, actually, it's up here, but that's okay. Just do it at the end.
Sorry, Student of the Month. This is the time that we recognize children in our district who have excelled in. Mrs. Dar and Mrs. Keeler.
There we go. Can I invite Raphael to come stand with me?
Absolutely.
Raphael, can you come up here? This is Raphael Galaza, and he is in 5th grade. Is that right? Did I do that right? Okay. So I'm going to give him a laminated copy of the letter that we submitted to you for the Student of the Month, but just to give you a little bit of an overview. We had a student in the building, he was in the 5th grade as well, who was having a real hard time coming into school, even getting started that way. We were finally able to get him to come into school, but he couldn't get beyond the main office. And it was days of prodding and encouraging and bribing, using administrators, teachers, the administrative assistants, our therapy dog. I mean, we tried everything with all our expertise and all our professionalism and all our training. There was nothing that we could do to get this student to engage and go to class. Until one day, Raphael enters the room. And I'm going to read you the paragraph that is what brought us to this point. Raphael entered the room where John was. He went in slowly, gently, and calmly. He asked John if it was okay for him to sit with him. John had his head down on the desk, presenting that he didn't care and that he wasn't going to listen. Raphael began, "I was just like you, you know." Raphael told him that he hated coming to school and that he found it hard to be in class too. He told John that one day a student came to talk with him, just like he was doing with John. The student told him to just take some small steps and that school was a good place. Raphael decided he needed to try it, and he did just that. He completely changed his outlook on school and became a better, grounded, and a better rounded student. Raphael then went on to tell John that the days go by much quicker when you are in class learning with the teacher. He said to John he understood that it was hard and scary to make friends, and that he, Raphael, would be his friend and help him out. He told John that the first step was always the hardest, but that he never regretted taking it. He told John that he would be there for him no matter what, that he wouldn't leave his side. He also told John that it will get better, not right away, but it will. And the reason why we know that these are the things he said, Jane was in her office next door, and if we had had a cup, we would be like this. But the door was open, and Jane overheard most of it, and it was, we were in our offices just practically crying because we couldn't believe it. And then ultimately, the next thing we know, out walks Raphael and John off and going to class. We're so proud of Raphael. We are beyond ecstatic to have him as a student at Salisbury Elementary, and we couldn't let that go without congratulating him and just giving him the greatest thank you for being who he is and reaching out to another student.
Raphael, when I read this nomination, it brought me to tears as well. I think that's wonderful what you do, and I hope every student watches what you've done and continues to have kindness to help children. I have a little plaque for you, and I'm very proud of you as well. We'll take a picture with you guys.
Okay, perfect.
Does she want to come up to take a picture? The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. I'll second.
Discussion? Any discussion? All those in favor? I'd like to read the donations. Donations, to receive a donation in the amount of $3,500 from the Institute for Savings to use in the robotics STEM team at the high school, and to receive a donation in the amount of $5,000 from the Newburyport Bank to assist with the offset of student user fee for athletics. I want to thank for those donations. Okay.
New business. Oh, no, sorry, student representative, just said it. Kaylee's not.
The student representative tonight is not here. Kaylee's not feeling well.
Can't do new business.
Any new business? Any new business that would like to add to future agendas? Nope.
I just realized. I just realized that there's no chairperson's remarks on the agenda.
Yeah, we know.
Okay. Apologies
She's
for
going to do
that.
it at the end.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is the wellness update.
So I'd like to introduce to you Kara Briley. She is formerly an LICSW social worker at the high school and is now the district wellness coordinator that you obviously know we funded in the budget. So she is here to give you an overview of the lots of stuff that has happened since she came on board this summer. So Kara.
Thank you. And thank you for taking the time to listen to all of these updates tonight. I'm really excited to share with you what we've done so far. I did want to let you know, as Brian said, I have been with Triton for the 2 years prior. I was the clinical coordinator in our LIFT program, which is our transition program in the high school for students who are coming back from psychiatric hospitalizations. So tonight I wanted to just start by giving you some context and some background about why it is that we need a wellness coordinator and what it is that we need to get done in our district. So here on the left, I just want you to see that the last time that Massachusetts passed our comprehensive health curriculum framework was 1999. Since 2018, they've been working on the most updated version, but it still has not passed. So when we're looking at what we should be doing, it's a really outdated model right now. We're expecting that when these new frameworks are released, that there will be definitely some more emphasis on social emotional learning as well as mental health. So where we're going. Over here is an updated version of what we're looking at for schools in terms of wellness. This is a CDC model, whole school, whole community, whole child. And if you look at the difference, you can see that it hits a whole lot more places of wellness. A lot of schools across the state are already using this model, as well as across the country, but in particular around us. So when I started this position over the summer, I spent a lot of time going to professional development and also speaking to similar positions across our state, all the way down to North Carolina, just trying to gather information about best practice and how people have found success in these sorts of roles. And the number one thing that we really needed to address to start was mental health. And so we all know that we have been living through this collective trauma of the pandemic for the past 18 months. And unfortunately, as we probably suspected, mental health in our children has certainly been impacted. There's lots of information. The CDC released a report in May and in June. One was about educators and how impacted their mental health has been. And then the other one was about students. And so just a couple of stats, you can see in the top one, this is from that CDC report, that there was a 51% increase in children, girls in particular, between 12 and 17, who were being seen at hospitals for suicide attempts. That's a staggering number. Youth depression and anxiety doubled during the pandemic. This is a need that existed before the pandemic, but has only gotten worse. And so there was actually a report released today from the Child Mind Institute, and it reflected on these stats, but it also reflected on the fact that our teenagers are much more resilient than we have been giving them credit for. So it was encouraging to know that our kids, given the right supports, are going to be able to work through these things. So, excuse me. One of the first things I did over the summer was I applied for our district to be a part of an academy that is sponsored by Department of Ed, Transforming Education, and Education Development Center. And this academy is a 3-year program. And what we will be doing is we will be building a multi-tiered system of support, in particular to social emotional learning and mental health. And so we talk a lot about MTSS in terms of academics, but we could certainly use some help around filling in all of the tiers across the district to support our students in their mental health and social emotional learning. So what the program will do is it will take a multidisciplinary team from across the district. We have a nurse, we have administrators, social workers, teachers, special ed, general ed. So it's really representative of all of us. And we will spend some time assessing what resources we do have right now, how we can build off of those, and where we need to go to fill in the gaps. Some of the features are that we have a coach that's assigned just to us, and so we'll be doing lots of coaching sessions. We have our first one in 2 weeks to do a self-assessment and sort of figure out where we're at to start. We also have the ability to do team sharing throughout the 3 years, and so there are about 20 other districts across the state that are part of this 3-year cohort. So we'll be going through all 3 years of this together. And so it's just more resources to share between all of us. What else? So in terms of the mental health initiative, another thing that will be off the ground later this month is the Signs of Suicide program. And so this is an evidence-based program for suicide prevention that's been around for many, many years. The Department of Public Health actually just made it available to all schools across Massachusetts for free because it is that important of a program. So we partnered with Essex County Asset Builder to provide some funding and support around these initiatives. We also partnered with Minding Your Mind, And so what we're doing is we are addressing this from 3 different perspectives. So in terms of students, the 7th and 10th graders are going to be going through this program over this next month. 7th grade will be in November, and high school's at the end of the month. They'll go through the program, and at the end of it, there's a screener so that we can assess which students are struggling and if they need additional support. On top of that, we want to make sure that families are involved and know what it is that their students are learning and also how they can support their students. So next week, we have Minding Your Mind doing a presentation on suicide prevention in teens, and that'll be a virtual event, and it'll be available for a week after it's presented so that if people can't get there, they still have access. And then lastly, we wanted to make sure our educators are also supported and knowledgeable about this. And so all staff grades 6 through 12 will have the teacher version of the Signs of Suicide program. And so that program helps teachers identify warning signs as well as what to do should they have concerns. And more partnerships. So in addition to those 2 initiatives, we have been lucky enough to partner with the Home for Little Wanderers, which is a community mental health center. And they have partnered with us to come into all of our elementary schools as well as the middle school. And what they will be doing is offering therapy to those students who otherwise would not have access outside of the school day. So whether it's because of transportation or schedules or whatever it is, if there's a student who needs therapy and can't get it when they're not at school, they now have access to it in the elementary and middle school. We also partnered with Polished. So Polished is a preventative dental program, and they will come into all of the schools, actually, they will be, and they do teeth cleaning and sealants and preventative work. And then if there are students that have more issues that need to be addressed, they do referrals to dentists that will accept that student's insurance, which can be a little bit tricky. So that's their expertise, which is great. The neurosequential model in education is something that the counselors and much of the special education staff is going to be getting training in over the course of the year. And if you're not familiar with this, I highly encourage you to research Dr. Bruce Perry. He just recently released a book with Oprah called What Happened to You? And the neurosequential model is really about understanding how the brain works when it's been exposed to trauma and adversity, and how that impacts learning. So it's very science-based. Dr. Bruce Perry is a child psychiatrist, and he's been in this field for years. So it's really exciting. And actually, the special education staff had read the book and had asked if this is something we could participate in. And then lastly, we had several staff last year, a cohort of staff that finished the Trauma-Sensitive Schools program through Leslie College. And they were kind of thinking about, okay, well, we have all this information and knowledge, but what are we going to do with it? So we spent some time this summer coming up with a plan, and what we ultimately decided is to form the Triton Trauma Team. And so the trauma team is available to anyone across the district who is in need of some consulting. So if they're working with a student that they believe has experienced trauma and they're not really sure how to manage, they can request a consultant to consult with somebody from the team. We've also released a monthly newsletter to share things with staff about resources for themselves as educators, as well as tips and tricks on how to deal with trauma and things that you might see in the classroom. So that is what I've been doing since July. I have lots of other great ideas. And I'm really hoping that as we move forward, that there is an opportunity to really create this more comprehensive school mental health system so that all of our kids are getting all of the services that they need, and all of the clinical staff is getting the support they need so they can effectively provide that. So I really appreciate your time tonight, and I look forward to coming back and sharing more updates.
Thank you, Kara. I don't know if there are questions from the committee for Kara or statements.
So whenever we've asked about what's going on with the wellness coordinator, Brian's like, she hit the ground running. I will say you hit the ground running. Holy crow. That was a lot. Very impressive. My one question for you, which is one I often ask of people who come here and present kind of these new initiatives, is what do you need from us?
That's a great question.
Can I ask you to use a mic just because I know it won't pick up on the recording without it? Thanks. Bob has trained us well.
Money, lots of money. That's a good question. Actually, I have to say that people have been so generous. Essex County has just said, anything you need, we will pay for it. I think that people really feel the need for this support for kids right now. I think ultimately, if this position was full-time and there wasn't a teaching component, I think that it would just be more resources to be able to provide and support, our kids and our staff as well.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just add, we kind of have a broad umbrella that we deal with here, policy, anything like that. So we can adjust as needed, especially where there's a good reason to. So I would just say keep that in mind because this is always a kind of an ongoing comprehensive effort, I'd say. But, I think it's hard sitting here and meeting once a month to always know where change is needed. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Kara.
The next item on the agenda is the senior privileges update.
Class officer, two of the senior class officers. I'm Will.
I'm Lizzie. So we're here to present our senior privileges and our request for those. We recently sent a proposal to Mr. Forget, but to recap on that, what we want to do is for our last period study halls, we want to be able to leave the building early. And this would only be for last period study halls. No other study halls would be included. We think that this would be a really good idea because it would give seniors an opportunity to figure out how to manage their time a little bit better, which they're going to need to figure out to do with their near future, especially after graduation. And we'd obviously be subjected to operating under our own behavior. So if we abuse this privilege, it can be taken away from us with administration.
We'd also have like a log or a sign-up sheet in the office of benefits out, just so the staff obviously know where everyone is at all times, fire drill, and if people were not to use the sign-up, then that privilege is taken away.
So I think as everyone recognizes, I like having students come to present because it gives them some ownership in the process as well, wanting to make sure that they're able to have that kind of ownership stake with this. We do think that it's important for this to be an ongoing conversation as we go through the year with this senior class and then each subsequent year with each senior class, because different classes have different personalities and different needs, and also demonstrate different levels of independence and respect. The class this year is certainly one that I think is deserving of having a little bit greater autonomy because they have done everything that we've asked them through the process, and they've been phenomenal members of our school community. I think one of the things that I know they've asked for different things as we've gone along, and we've kind of narrowed some of the focus and said, well, we'll start with this, and then, as we go forward through the year, we'll consider other things if they are appropriate and if the class is operating well with what they have. So this is similar to what our seniors did last year. So as many of you remember, our senior class last year came and presented. They had similar privileges throughout the course of the year, and we operated that way in part because of the pandemic, but I think also in part as a teaching and learning experience for our students to really work on some of those time management aspects that Lizzie spoke to just a minute ago. So if you have questions for our seniors, or if you have questions for me, I'm
And can I just add one thing? So this is in the report and deliberation section of the agenda. This isn't something that historically the committee has needed to approve. It's not a policy. Unlike if we're talking about, we're going to talk about an internship program that changes the course of studies, that is a committee approval. So it's, for me, I can tell you my intention is to approve this, and this was an opportunity for them to present to you and ask questions and make any adjustments as we see fit.
Go ahead, Erin.
Patrick, can you speak to us a little bit about how the schedule works in the high school, as in explaining whether or not everybody has an opportunity to take advantage of this, or if it's limited because there's some individuals that may not have an open period at the end of the day?
Yeah, so I know this was something that you had brought up last year as well, Erin. And so the schedule this year is a rotating schedule, so it will be something that's available to all senior students. Last year, where our schedule was fixed, it wasn't something that was available to everybody if you had to study in the middle of the day, but where the schedule rotates, it would be something that's available for all.
Anybody else? Narissa?
I have more of a comment than anything. So first of all, congratulations to you two on making it through however many years of school you've already made it to, because you're almost at the end. So congratulations on that. I think this is a great thing. I love to see where this is kind of the transition year, to have that additional opportunity for independence and responsibility, obviously with some caveats there, right? If things go south, then it gets reined back in. But I think this is a wonderful thing to let the seniors have, and definitely a good privilege and a reward for having done a great job through their high school years.
I also want to say you guys did a great job in speaking, and I think it's a great opportunity for them to come and tell us what it is that they want. And hopefully you'll be coming with more things that you have come up with. Anybody else have anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
There it is. You guys have senior privileges.
The next item on the agenda is the high school internship program.
So just to clarify, we're missing several people. So Paul Mayette is taking minutes as well tonight. So I believe he's acting as reporter, photographer. So while they're setting up, just to cue this up, you remember last year, I think it was the same group, yes, it was, that came and presented the concept of piloting an internship program at the high school. And so they're now back to bring you an update to that presentation. And hopefully, there'll be an update. How detailed and how visually coordinated it is another discussion.
This was a Zoom meeting that we had that they were on.
Oh, that's right. Holy cow. Some got some music to play. Please hold. Your call is important to us. Yeah. Mr. Kelly, is there any setting up and queuing up you want to provide? Hold it really close. I think if you hold it, this one might be louder.
So I'm not sure if this one's doing
That one on?
a lot. Is it? So the internship program is something that came out of a group of dedicated teachers who were looking for ways to really think about and reimagine where the high school was going to be coming back from the pandemic. They looked at a number of different things that were going to be impacting our school in ways in which they were hoping to move forward and hoping that we would be moving forward as a school community. The internship program was one of them. And so this is one of the initiatives that we were moving forward on right away. They've continued working on this and continued thinking about how we can make this an effective experience for our students as they go through. The framework for what they're going to be presenting on this evening really focuses on the questions that were specifically asked by school committee last June. And then providing responses to that and maybe some additional context in terms of the conversations that we've had since then, and ways in which we see this potentially growing and developing over the course of the year. I think one of the things that I want to also say is kind of a caveat before we start is what we're looking to do this year is to pilot. So this isn't where we necessarily might see the program 5 years from now, but we think it's important to start with a cohort group of students to see what works for our school and our community, and what, quite frankly, doesn't. We know from other models in other communities, things that work in those settings, but that doesn't necessarily mean each of those components will work the same way here. And so we've done research into other programs and kind of have, I think, a really good framework for where we need to start, but we also want to recognize that through the process, there's going to be a lot that we learn. And from that learning will be kind of the need to make changes and adjustments. So I'll pause there so I don't steal any of your thunder. No, you keep going. And that mic, I think, is live as well.
Hello. Good evening. My name is James Allen. I'm an English teacher at the high school, and I'll have everyone else introduce themselves.
Dan Boyle, the co-chair, I guess, of the committee that started this. James and Tony were members of the Internship Subcommittee.
I'm Tony MacDonald-Fine, art teacher here at the high school.
So, as Patrick said before, we had you last year and done kind of a comprehensive timeline and kind of our initial thoughts for this program. And then you guys asked some questions, and now we're going to be kind of going through those main ones here. And I will try not to read off the PowerPoint presentation too much because it's right there. One of the questions had to do with the mentors who are here in the building and who are kind of mentoring the students from here, going out to the site of wherever the internship is, the job site or the facility or whatever, to kind of check it out. Right now we're looking to make sure that there's a lot of communication between the mentor that's in the building and the on-site coordinator. There will be someone at the site where the student will be working. And so they would have regular communication. We're going to be looking to see if in the future we might be able to go out to the site in the future, but as for right now, it's kind of a hindrance because we are here in the building. Another one was time on learning. You folks had brought up the idea that maybe the students wouldn't be meeting their time on learning, and we discovered that DESE does recognize internship programs as curriculum and time on learning, part of the 180 days, 990 hours. So obviously there will be some curriculum that the students will lose in the last few weeks of their classroom experiences. So that is something that they're going to need to deal with. But we feel that the teachers will be able to kind of help them through that program, especially in the first year, where we're going to be very, selective in who we have go through the program. And then depending on the growth of the program, we can kind of deal with that since this is a pilot year.
So one of the things that I think we see in other communities that have internship programs that are going in a similar fashion is that after they've been established for a few years, the teachers kind of adjust what their curriculum is for the whole scope and sequence of the year, knowing that they're going to lose a significant portion of their population there at the end of the school year. So instead of planning your sequence of curriculum from September through June, they're planning their sequence of curriculum from September through April.
Right.
And so that just shifts for seniors, and there are things that come out, and I would say by and large we have many classes where the teachers are teaching well beyond what the standards are, and so to feel like our students are getting shortchanged, they wouldn't be. We would just be adjusting our scope and sequence to accommodate this.
Yeah, and I don't remember if Patrick had mentioned this before, but we are looking at a small cohort this first year, about 20 to 25 kids, so that could be dealt with as we move forward. And then another concern was with AP students missing some of their classwork as they lead up to the tests. And our thought that in the first year that AP students would not be part of this program because we're going to need to deal with how we adjust that curriculum. As you guys know, AP classes are built a little bit differently with a test at the end of the year. This year, I know I teach one of the AP classes. The tests begin early this year, May 2nd through the 13th, I think it is. So they would be missing, they would be starting the internship right when they would be taking the tests. And I think this is down here as well, that not only do the teachers need to kind of have an experience of how to kind of plan around that, but sometimes classes sort of culminate. I know I build up to a lot more, test prep right before the test happens. So we would the AP students would be losing that right as we go into the test. See if I missed anything here. Yeah, so there's also, and I know Patrick can speak to this too, but there is a model that we're sort of following and that we're looking at with Masconomet, and they follow a sort of a different tracking system depending on who is taking AP classes, if they're taking them at all, if they're taking 1 or 2 AP classes, or if they're taking 3 or more. I have a student who's taking 5 this year. So that's a real, hindrance of their program. But even if they're taking a lot of them, there's a possibility as we kind of work through this that they might be able to begin at like a later date or on a limited basis as we kind of go into the program. So, if they are taking none, they could start right away. Possibly in the future, if they're taking 1 or 2, maybe they could do like a limited internship. And if there's more than 2, then I think, they have to wait until after their tests are all over. So, that's another thing that we're going to have to find out, right? And I think that experience is going to help us through that. I may have Patrick speak a little bit to this one with the community outreach one, because we've added some stuff here.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we would really want to consider is looking at who our community partners are. We already have a number of various industry representatives and local business affiliates through either the local chambers of commerce, coming to our vocational career fairs. We actually have one coming up soon, where we have a number of those contacts that are already in place. And so I think there would be some students that would be coming forward with internships that they had already thought about who they want to work with, and then there'd be some that would be coming forward with an idea of what they might want to do or an industry that they might be interested in, and then we'd be looking to help find them a pair or a match. And so we'd have to be looking to collaborate with other area officials. A number of the different applications that we've looked at actually ask students for what are the industries or areas of interest that you have and rank them so that we have a better sense of what they might be looking at. And in year 1, our pool of industries or our pool of partners is going to start relatively small, and then it will hopefully grow year after year. And as we think about the program as a whole, I think one of the things that we're considering is starting it really small, mindfully so, because as it grows, past where we'd be starting, we're really going to need to find ways to staff it appropriately as well. So when we think about, the conversation from the very start of this, having mentors be able to go out on site to visit and do site visits or meet with on-site mentors. Those are things that are ideals that we would like to build to, but also recognizing that there are staffing constraints that we'll have to overcome through the process. And so in a school that doesn't necessarily have additional staff just waiting for extra jobs, that's something that's a challenge and something that depending on the growth of this and the success of this, which I think our students will be excited for, but depending on the growth and success of it, we might be here at the table a year or 2 years from now saying, what we really need is someone that's 0.5 to help coordinate all of our internships, because we're managing, relationships with 50 different partners, and we have students going here, there, and everywhere, doing all of these wonderful things. But to do that would require some staffing. So just thinking about some of that community outreach, it's really about focusing on building some of those partnerships, and a number of them, we already have partnerships that are in place. I know when this was being put together, we also were thinking about, some of the local area like police, fire, other schools. We have a number of students who are interested in working in education and thinking about them being able to work in other schools in the district. I know one of the things that came up in the strategic improvement plan was some of that opportunity for our high school students to better interact with and work with our elementary students. So there's ways there for some synergy between the two. And so I think utilizing some of those opportunities that we already have available and that we know we already have strong relationships with is a good place to start.
There was another question about internships in the trades. We talked quite a bit about this, and we wanted to be able to provide some sort of exploration, we called it, into the trades. Safety is one of the things that we talked quite a bit about, and the idea of how much we want to be able to allow our students to work out in the field, but also how much the industries that we'd be asking to take on these students are comfortable with taking on our students who may not have any experience in this. But I think that that's going to be a communication between us and the different companies that we decide to partner with, and an exploration of the trades is probably the best method to sort of go with, at this time. And then there are some that are going to be a little bit more dangerous, perhaps. So it would be more of like an observation-only sort of internship. But we don't want to lose that, but we also want to kind of keep safety in mind there as well. Transportation, we have a limited ability to get the students to these jobs, so we're not going to be able to guarantee transportation to the jobs. They're going to need to, do as much as they can to hopefully get transportation themselves or get transportation from a friend, but we're not closing the door like we almost always do. We try to find a way to help the students get to their jobs. This is something that we really don't want to be as a hindrance to the students. So I'm pretty sure that, especially with a small cohort, we're going to be able to find a way to get everybody to the place that they have, decided where they want to go. We typically do a good job finding ways, I think, in high school in that realm. So
for some of it might be around pairing to strategically our students with industries or with organizations that we know. Either we have a bus that drives close by that location, or if a student is pairing with one of the local police or fire departments, we can get them there. If they're pairing with an elementary school, they can ride the bus from the high school to the elementary school. We can find creative ways. I know we don't necessarily always want students that are 18 riding on the bus with 6-year-olds, but if they're going there with the express purpose of trying to help those 6-year-olds in the classroom as well, it's probably not a bad thing to have them on the bus. So there are ways, I think, that we could, in spaces that we can think creatively, to James's point of pairing students with either a sector or an area or an organization that we might have greater access to help with transportation if that is an obstacle.
Interns. Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. I'm like, wait a second. So this is, this is kind of an overview piece. We're going to be limiting the pilot to 20 students. But we worry too that, once, I think that, I think the students sort of know that this is out there, that this is a possibility. But once they, see all the things that they're going to need to do for this project and the hours and the projects and the papers and the essay, we may have some students who decide, well, maybe it's not for me. I'd rather see somebody go through this. So we're going to be, pushing some of the students. I think there are students out there who would be interested in it. We might have had a couple here tonight. But we want to be cognizant that there may be some very few early adopters. But I'm pretty sure that we can get 20 students. And we want to make sure that we're represented well, right? This is us putting Triton High School out into the community. So we want ourselves to be represented well. We want, a variety of students to go out there to a variety of jobs, but we also know that, we're putting our face on this as well. And then we decided that after we had quite a discussion about this, that we would not allow students to be interns at their own family business. I think you guys can jump in here too, but we talked about that a lot of these students may already be working for their family businesses. And to do this in addition to that would kind of be redundant, but would also benefit them if they work at a construction company, maybe they go to a different construction company and they have experience there that they then bring back to their own company and try something new. So that's where we landed there. So I was kind of just, as I went through this, kind of thinking about different themes that kind of work through this, and I think we're trying to really make this work with what we have for a select group of students who really represent us well, and kind of are going to find a way to do all these things for them. So, anything I missed? Okay. Any questions to the questions, to the answers?
Is there any questions from the committee?
I'll just give my compliments again. I love this idea, and I'm glad that you've thought through this and are ready to go, because I think, I feel like this is one of those places where you can get caught in indecision for a long period of time and never get anything off the ground. So I'm excited to see that this is something that's going to be, kind of ready to go out the door, test it, trial it, figure out what works and what doesn't work, and then build it from there, because I think that's a great way to go about doing it, and I'm glad that it's happening.
Thank you.
And I think it gives the students something else to look into. I'm glad to see that you're allowing any student, no matter what field they want to go into, even if it is the trades, even if they can't touch anything, to look and see if that is what they want to do. I think it's an awesome program that you're trying to put together, and I applaud all of you.
Thank you.
So just to confirm, you pulled this forward, but this is an action item, that because this changes the academic programming, you do need to approve this.
All right, I was going to ask, do we need a motion? So I'll make a motion to approve the high school internship program as presented this evening.
Second the motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
The next item on the agenda is the Mcas presentation.
You need to use the mic.
Okay.
Try it now.
I'm so afraid. Hello? Okay. So my presentation is on the Mcas. Usually this time of the year, I have a PowerPoint that has multiple slides talking about achievement that has occurred throughout the district. This year, obviously, it's a very different presentation for a variety of reasons, mostly because we had much unfinished learning that occurred last year. So before I go into just a quick overview of some of the scores, I just want to give some background around the Mcas assessment this year and really what was the driving force for the Department of Ed to even administer the Mcas across the state. One of the biggest reasons that they had stated for continuing on with the Mcas is that teachers would be able to have results to use as far as really understanding where their students were in regards to the standards. And so with that, they hoped that they would use the results really for a diagnostic purposes. And so really that, if you think of the Mcas this year, being given for those diagnostic purposes as opposed to achievement, it really does create a different landscape when you look at these results. So with that said, the Department of Ed also decided that they needed to make some additional adjustments, not just with the focus of the Mcas, but the amount of questions. So they reduced the amount of questions to about half of what the students would traditionally answer. They also pushed the Mcas out to a further testing date window. Usually it happens sometime starting in March and it goes over a couple of months. But this they really tried to push, I want to say even up to June. We were somewhere in the middle of that time frame. But again, what the hope was that students would be back in person, full-time, and be able to experience some consistent learning without any disruptions. So we also had students this year taking, for the first time ever, the assessment in a remote setting, which, interesting enough, they found that the scores did not vary greatly between whether they took it in remote or whether they were in person or they had school in a remote setting all year. So I thought that was interesting. Student growth percentiles, they had to come up with a new system to figure out what exactly was the student growth percentiles across the state. Obviously, as you would expect, that the growth percentiles were not as strong as they had been in the past. And as far as achievement, ELA was stronger than math, and we know that trying to teach math via remote without the hands-on concrete examples was probably the most challenging academic area for kids. So that's just a quick overview of the changes that occurred over the course of the year in regards to the administration of the Mcas. As far as results, they definitely caution folks not to look and compare across schools and grade levels. So that's why I decided to just report out on a grade span 3 through 8, because again, looking at some of the themes, it didn't matter which grade level, the themes were consistent across all grade spans. So again, looking at the English language arts, that seemed to be our strongest area. We did perform above the state, 47% students meeting or exceeding, and then 11% students not meeting or exceeding. So what does that look like as far as our strategy or our focus moving forward? We had started to have teachers participate in a curriculum review looking at our ELA programs, and they're currently piloting 2 programs right now. And so that will continue on through this year with the hope by the end of the year they will either choose one of those programs and they have some set criteria that they're using and they're meeting regularly to discuss. We have continued with empowering writers. We had to put that on hold last year, so we have started to move that forward. In fact, it was actually this week, the elementary teachers had a empowering writers professional development, and they will also have some professional development at the middle school.
There's some specialized training in the area of special education that is going to support some phonemic awareness skill set that was, unfortunately, it had to be postponed. It's called LIPS, so it's kind of hard to do with the masks. And virtual, it was going to be 3 very long days, so we've pushed that out to January, so we're looking forward to that. Mathematics, moving on. Is there any questions about the ELA piece of it before I move on to kind of math? So math has been a struggle of ours for some time. That seems to be the area that we continually need to strengthen. We did perform slightly below the state in that range. This year, we have the new edition of Math in Focus, which is updated and a stronger alignment with our Massachusetts standards. I will say the increased elementary math specialists couldn't have come at a better time. They have been working really hard in working with teachers, but also doing some interventions with class, some push-ins, some modeling. They have reworked the standards based on some of this diagnostic assessments, as well as their iReady math assessment, to better address those learning gaps that existed with the curriculum last year. So that's been a real positive. And at the middle school, too, the reading specialists and the math specialists, talk about hit the ground running, are very comfortable working with data, working with teachers. And they have been able to set up some opportunities for teachers to unpack some of that data. And they're doing that, I want to say, the early release day. So even in this troubled time, I believe that our ability to foresee what was going to happen in the future regarding we need more math specialists. We need even having the full-time mental health coordinator. All of those pieces and those particular structures and supports have really benefited as we were able to move forward and address some of these areas of need for this year and beyond. So thank you for supporting that, I would say, because it is definitely needed and it is paying off. We have and continue to work with our Math in Focus consultant. She was recently at the elementary level and is going to be working with the math teachers directly at the middle school. So that's exciting too. Helping them again to try to navigate through these standards, what power standards need to be addressed, because what we don't want to do is teach 6th grade curriculum in 7th grade, right? That's just instructionally, that's not what we want to do. We want to really try to bridge where we need to bridge those concepts, but also move forward with grade level material. So that's our goal, and that's what the focus has been. I will add that I think it was last meeting, we were talking about that early numeracy benchmarking assessment, and we were talking about somebody piloting. They actually all are doing that. So I just wanted to clarify that. 5 and 8, looking at the science, I think that was an area that was, again, we continued to stay strong in certain areas in the science, which was amazing, especially since we were virtual for part of the year. We want to continue to strengthen that through our after-school programming and continuing to focus on science at the elementary level. We're increasing science instruction at Salisbury Elementary. That was always an area that we were concerned about, and I know Catherine Daw has done a lot of work as far as looking at the schedules and making sure that there is time in the schedule for science and that it is being taught. So that's been positive. And in grade 10, again, with the results, the class of 2022, they had a competency determination that was modified in ELA and math, and that was based on some of the credit for some of the relevant courses, so they did not have to take certain MCAS. The 2021 MCAS results do not include grade 10 science and technology and engineering. Students who were in grade 11 in the spring of 2021, that's the class of 2022, were able to take the grade 10 ELA and mathematics tests, just because if they wanted to qualify for that Adams Scholarship, they would have that opportunity to do so, and they didn't miss out on that. So that was good. And you can see their scores as well. 68% students meeting or exceeding expectations. That was actually a low number, 3% students not meeting expectations. was probably one of our lowest numbers that we've had in that particular category. And then mathematics, it drops, it drops. So we would, again, below the state, and we certainly have some work to do, and I know the teachers are working within their departments to address some of those learning gaps and unfinished content. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Like I said, this year specifically, the MCAS data, as well as all of our internal district data, is using as a diagnostic piece to help the teachers plan, organize their curriculum, create scope and sequence, but also supporting the students' social and emotional, getting them back engaged. I think there's always that balance between making sure that we're providing that rigorous academic piece to them, but also re-engaging them, as we know, as we just heard, and making sure that their mental health and wellness is also taken into consideration, because if they are not there mentally or socially and emotionally, then learning just is not going to happen. So that balance. That's that. Any questions?
Any questions?
I mean, I can go if you want. I have a few, Kim. So I guess one of my questions is about kind of in-district measurement systems versus MCAS. Does this match what you see in iReady?
So it's similar. I would say it depends on the school. It depends on the grade level. That's where I thought there were a lot more differences and gaps potentially with the reporting. But yeah, I mean, collectively, I would say our ELA was much stronger than our math for sure. And the range is very similar.
Okay.
So they weren't totally different.
Okay, all right. Another one of my questions, so back when they started piloting the computerized MCAS, there were differences in scores based on who had taken it on computer and who had taken it on paper. Obviously, you're comparing who had taken it at Triton versus who had taken it across the state in the same mode. Do you feel like, because this is one of the questions I'd asked before, do you feel like obviously students were on computers a lot last year, but we haven't been explicitly teaching it for quite some time. Do you feel like that's a compounding factor in this?
Can you repeat, so that they were on the computer as far as taking it and we weren't?
Yeah, because obviously like they go in and they learn, whatever specific reflex math, right?
Yes.
But they're not necessarily doing the applications that the MCAS requires of them.
Yes.
Prior to actually doing the MCAS.
Yes.
And we haven't been explicitly teaching technology. Obviously they're picking it up because it's required in a lot of what was required in pretty much everything they did in the classroom last year. But it wasn't an explicit instruction that they were receiving.
Right.
So I'm wondering if that...
It's hard to say. There were so many factors. It's hard to pinpoint one.
Yeah.
I would say the kids were definitely more comfortable on the computer taking the MCAS for sure than they have ever been before. But there's definitely a disadvantage when kids are not having pen and pencil and working through some of those algorithms and equations and writing down different notes that they need to help work through some of that problem solving. So it could have, I really believe for me the biggest impact was just they did not have consistency as far as instruction. There was definitely this start and this stop.
Okay.
And then just the hybrid, kids coming to school at different days. I will say that, and I was talking to Shannon a little bit about this, that for me, what I was looking for is, I always say I don't want to grow the red, right? You want to go to the green. The green is where kids are working at grade level, and then there's the yellow, and then there's the red. My biggest worry was that red would grow, and that did not happen at all, which was great. I think that speaks to, when you are committed to bringing in students who have learning disabilities or who have individualized educational plans, and you know they need to be in this school every single day, we fought to get them into this school every single day with educators. And that made a huge difference, because talking to other assistant superintendents to find out what that looked like for them, it was a different story. And so they're working to get kids from that kind of red zone into the yellow and then to the green, where we need to grow that green. We need to take those kids who are those cuspy kids and move them. Well, we need to move everybody, but that speaks to our commitment to making sure that we really didn't want to go in that direction. So, and I think the other thing that came out of, when you talk to the special educators about this whole situation, is when those kids were coming to school, they created this kind of strong cohort amongst themselves, which was really an unexpected surprise. And they felt really comfortable taking risks within those small group settings, and the teachers were able to adjust curriculum and move them through it. And they could backfill, they could reteach, and they could go at their own pace. So I think that was something that we kind of walked away with and said, wow, that was really, we did not expect that at all. And so to see that the scores in that particular area were not as impacted as some of the other ones, I think was a testimony to the kids working hard, the teachers working hard, and our commitment to say, no, we need to get these kids back every single day. And the teachers, I think of, gosh, just a year ago that we had special educators back in and IAs back in, and it was scary. And it was scary, and we didn't know what to expect, but we did it, and we worked through that. And I think, like I said, we were able to prevent some serious learning loss or gaps in learning because of what everybody did, I guess.
Okay. Looking specifically at the math, grades 3 through 8, I guess I know that you, clearly from the way you do your thing, you kind of group exceeding expectations and meeting expectations, and then kind of your red zone kids, the not meeting expectations. I have to say, when I look at these numbers, I kind of look at it a little bit differently. I look at it as exceeding and meeting sort of on one side, and partially meeting and not meeting on sort of the other side, right? That group that needs some bolstering to get there. Yep. Either slight bolstering or dramatic bolstering, right? 70%. I mean, I know the state numbers are high too, but 70% is huge. Yeah. I guess I just look at the district strategy focus on the right-hand side, and I see there things that are kind of the next generation of what we're doing now, and things that are going to help, I think, some kind of smaller groups of kiddos get some assistance, but that's the bulk of our student body that's needing help to kind of get over the line. Yep. What? Can you just help me here? I mean, I'm just looking at this and I'm not sure what provides that support that's going to move them.
I think the other thing is looking at the schedule too at the elementary level. We've dedicated a lot of time to ELA and writing, and we have not given, I think, math the amount of time that it needs. And I go back to that balance piece. We only have so much time in the day, and we have many things that the teachers are working to incorporate in a day. It's ELA, it's social and emotional well-being. We have wonderful things going on, class meeting at Pine Grove that happens every single day, class meetings. We just talked about increasing science, and now it's math. So it's really trying to balance that time out. And so working with the principals this year, we set a guideline to say, okay, this is how much time is recommended that we should be expecting to see in the schedules for math, and that is one area that we've increased the time for math. And also making it very explicit to say, we have a problem here. We did it before a couple of years ago when science was really in rough shape, to say, we need to look to see what we're doing. We need to meet more often to talk about what's happening in the classroom practices. Where do you need support? Where do the kids need support? What can we do after school to provide some opportunities for students to be really engaged in some of those activities and that problem solving? That makes a huge huge difference. So the teachers are definitely aware of it. We've increased the time, we've increased the resources, we've increased the coaching. And I do predict that with the iReady math and their progress monitoring abilities, they're going to be able to intervene much sooner as opposed to later. And I would say that we've been slow in order to get that iReady math up and running because it really was first introduced, I think it was the year that COVID started. And not to say that's an excuse, but it got put on the back burner, and now it's a focus, and we're going to use that data to help work through instruction and interventions. So.
Okay, so when's the next iReady benchmark?
So the next iReady benchmark is January.
January, okay. So
But we'll be doing progress monitoring before, though. So there's I think there's one other point in between there.
Okay.
So, yep.
And I would just jump in to say, your concern mentioned, what you mentioned as a concern was targeting not the broad, the breadth of the student body, but a specific population where the new edition of Math and Focus, the Math and Focus consultant, and that iReady and early numeracy, that is the student body. So I feel like those are broad scale addressing the needs of the whole population, including the 70% in the yellow and red. And obviously the math specialists, having that at the middle school and full-time at the elementary, yes, it allows more targeted interventions, but it also allows another math resource to help in that wide-scale implementation.
Okay.
And there's also co-teaching. The math specialist at the middle school is pushed in. She's in five classrooms right now that they're working to do small group instruction. Is it going to change overnight? Absolutely not. I can tell you that. But I can tell you that there are very specific strategies that they are putting in place, and they feel it. They want to move these kids just as much as we do, and give them that background so that they can be successful in future courses that they take. So. Okay.
And I will say I am not the biggest fan of MCAS. It's one indicator, but I'm glad to hear that it matches up with iReady, because to me that's the bigger indicator, what we needed to look at. But these numbers are shocking, and I'm assuming if they match iReady, then the iReady numbers are pretty shocking.
Yeah.
My last question is science in Salisbury Elementary. I don't want to, clearly you've taken some remedies there already, but it sounds like it's a pickup where the student is now remedy, and not necessarily some remedy going back to what should already be covered. Is that accurate? Are we just trying to, if there's a fourth grader and there's a gap there already, are you trying to supplement and fill that gap, or are you trying to kind of hop in fourth grade and just build as you go?
So they've had some science, but their science has been in the form of a textbook for the most part. It's a lot of content reading in the area of science. So they've been exposed to some of the topics and the units, but what they have not had an opportunity to do is a lot of hands-on experimental type activities. And that's what is going to be introduced, or is being introduced now, that they have not had that experience with as much as they should have.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better that at least that there was.
Yeah, no, they've
have a
had
foundation.
exposure. It's just a different type of exposure.
Okay, all right, thank you. That was all my questions.
Anybody else have any questions? Kim, I have a couple. First, I was going to mention about Salisbury Elementary and the science, and hands-on is the way kids need to learn. Also, the MCAS, that's why it's so important that the iReady is, any of those assessments are the same throughout the elementary schools. I know you may want to pilot one here or there, but it's only going to make it better for all the elementary schools to know where the deficiencies are, not just one school. So I'm glad to hear that the iReady is, because that was such a big thing years ago. There was discrepancies in all the schools. So we need to make sure that those iReady standards are the same throughout the schools. And I'm glad to hear that you've taken that initiative to do that. I appreciate all this information that you've given us. And, we were in a pandemic for 18 months and still in it. But the kids are back in school, so it's I know we have to go back to baby steps, and I'm glad to see that we have a strategy in place and helping the teachers to make sure that they don't feel that because of these scores or the iReady scores, that they feel that they failed our students. So I'm glad to see that there's some support and strategies going forward. I think that was all. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a Cpac update. We started the Cpac, but then pandemic hit. So I know that they've been slow up in doing what they need to do. Caitlin is a liaison to the Cpac, and I know she's been engaged with them and speaking with them. So she'll have an update for the Cpac.
Is that okay? Is that good? Okay. Sorry, I'm afraid of this thing. So the Cpac, I've talked to Alicia, who is the co-chair. They were very excited that one of their first kind of virtual presenters went off, and they had a lot of interest. So that was amazing to hear about. They don't have a specific update, but asked me to share that their next meeting is October 19th at 7 p.m. here at the high school library. And new members are always welcome, especially parents or caregivers of students on IEPs or 504s, or those looking for support for a student and maybe need some more guidance. And they would like to meet as many new people as they can to help grow their support system for everyone. And to check them out on Facebook, because that's where they'll be updating their calendar and any future kind of presentations going forward. Any questions?
The next item on the agenda is the District Communications Committee report. As you know, we all met with our towns and saw the same presentation. And we met again September 13th?
30th.
30th.
September 30th.
September 30th. And we sent them away with some information, and some of that information was not taken very well. So we are going to be meeting with the towns individually to have discussions, and then we will be meeting again on October 28th.
October 28th.
Yep.
Yeah. And then
October
again,
28th
November
to
18th.
continue the discussions about fixing the roof and other means of making this building better. Brian?
I just want to note that there is on the district website, under the news section, there is a post now with information. It's actually a 3-page from that meeting. The request was, can we get a 1-pager that kind of summarizes where we are? It's just not possible to put in 1 page, so it's actually 3 pages. So it's a 1-pager with a 2-page annex or addendum that Kyle put together, a very helpful document that kind of walks us through what our decisions are that need to be made. The first decision is, do we want to partner with the MSBA or not? And so it's there, that information is there for all to see. We've posted it, shared it with families, and so we can keep that discussion going. But so we have been invited to both the Newbury and Rowley boards of select boards, I should say, between now and the next meeting.
Yep, and it'll be an ongoing discussion to see what they want to do to help repair the buildings. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. The next item is to review the MASC annual meeting resolutions. So we all received the annual report and what the, yep. And Maureen is the nomination to attend those delegations. They're painful.
She was excited about it. I think you should say that.
It's just because everybody has an opinion, and everybody wants to be heard, and everybody thinks their opinion's better than everybody else's, so that's why it's painful.
Can I ask a question?
You got to move that closer.
Okay, having not done this before, and I know you have, I guess, what kind of guidance is helpful when you go to do this from the committee in the past? Like, what, is it having the committee look at these resolutions and say, yes, they agree, no, they don't agree? Like, I don't even really understand what my role will be.
Well, I gotta pull it closer as well. What we do is we can ask the committee to see if there's any of these resolutions that they strongly disagree with, that we don't want to participate or vote on those. But most of the time, you listen to what they say, and a lot of them are addendums, a lot of them they take off. So you don't even know if the ones that we say go ahead and vote on are even going to continue to remain there, because sometimes they push them out to a later date, or I think last year they passed, I think 2 of them were taking off, and they were voted on at a later time. So it's just if, did everybody get a copy of, does anybody have any strong opinions on any of those resolutions that?
There are some interesting ones this year, you know, unlike the past, they've been sort of bland.
Right.
There are some interesting ones this year, and I'm just curious to know how others feel.
Aaron?
I'm a little surprised at the electric school buses and the prohibiting the use of Native American mascots without talking a lot about the financial impact on the individual schools with both of those. And that to me would raise a little bit of a hesitancy without having some better information on if they're going to support the transition and how much they're going to support the transition for both of these, because you could find yourself in a situation in either case where you're faced with having to make that transition without being able to have the financial support to do it.
And a lot of times when you go there, you get people who agree with this resolution, and then you get a whole bunch of people who come up and disagree with the resolution. And if there's enough people that disagree with it, they remove it and say that they're going to move it to a later date, or it would just be non-existent for the rest of the time. So if you can asterisk that one, just to see what the conversation is on it.
Okay. The same with the electric buses. Like if they're going to require a transition, that's obviously going to affect the contracts that we have.
Does anybody else have any other ones?
So I shared the same concerns, but I don't think the electric school buses one doesn't require a mandate. It's asking for $30 billion to be dedicated to helping districts who I believe want to make that transition. They want to replace half of the school buses in the nation, so doesn't sound to me like it's a 100% sort of deal. But I do have concerns. That's a huge amount of money, and God, we need money elsewhere. I am all for electric vehicles. My family owns them, but when I look at what's needed in the districts, this would not be the top of my list. Probably not even in the top 10. So I don't know. And I'm just watching what Amesbury's going through with the mascot thing right now. I mean, I think clearly they've had a lot of Native Americans who have spoken out and say, I believe this is an honor. And I think there needs to be more of a conversation about this beyond what's in this particular resolution that's here. I think I mentioned that I'm not a huge fan of the MCAS as it stands. I love Resolution 6, toward finding an alternative to the MCAS for a graduation requirement, looking at something, talking about the new civics project that they put in, things like that districts could move towards as an alternative to MCAS. I love that idea. And I also like the full IDEA funding. I think that's something that I would love to see. I believe it's roughly 40% funded on an annual basis right now.
Thanks, Narissa.
Did you get all?
No. Paul?
I have to say that I love Resolution 4. I think that the amount of time that especially like K through 3 students are expected to be, oh, sorry. I have to say I love Resolution 4. I think especially the K through 3 students need significantly more active time than they get, and I think that this would increase the academic learning by adding the physical play into the day for especially the younger kids.
Thanks, Paul.
Paul Mayette?
Can I clarify on Paul Goldner's question? We do 20 minutes of uninterrupted play a day, right?
But
already?
Does it count as time on learning?
Oh, no, it does not.
This would add
That would be the
20
expectation.
minutes
Okay.
of, yeah, this resolution adds 20 minutes that comes out, that is counted towards the time on learning. So we'd be able to add in that recess time to the day. And I think the research I've seen on this is that the academic gains from having recess in the younger ages, even every hour, increases your academic output.
So just to clarify, so your expectation following on this would be the addition of a second 20 minutes?
That's what
So
this,
there would be the one that doesn't count and the one that does count?
that's what this seems to read to me.
Some districts have no recess or have,
Right, I understand, but the way I'm reading this is that there's a 20-minute time that wouldn't be excluded from the structured learning times at DESE. We have the 900 hours at the elementary.
yep.
And my reading of this is that 60 hours of that would then be, recess could be 60 hours of that time.
Okay.
That's my reading, because it cannot be excluded from the structured learning time. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but that's what in reading under the therefore it be resolved section.
So I guess I would say, I read it the same way you do. We are, I forget the exact number, 1,000 plus hours of time on learning at the elementary level. So all elementaries have at least one recess, and some are having 2 recess, having an additional recess, and we're still nowhere near. So as you said, Narissa, there are plenty of districts that have trimmed the day enough where the time on learning requirement is a problem and aren't able to add that recess, so this does. So for us, we'd be able to add a second recess, but it wouldn't change. We can do that now. Again, finding the time to do everything else in the day that is supposed to be happening, right? That's the other balance is, teachers are like, I love recess, but how am I supposed to do everything else, about 12 hours worth of needs in a 6-hour day?
Is there any other resolution Paul Mayette?
I had some misgivings about Resolution 1. I love it from the standpoint of improving health outcomes for students. It does seem to broaden our mission as schools, and I feel like that has been happening quite a bit. I sat here at our last meeting and loved that Beth Yeno presented that idea of doing the food survey among families, but thought, wow, that's really another step that's being put on schools, and I wonder if at what point it becomes untenable for us to continue to look at things like that, or not untenable, but maybe we need a real influx of cash to make those realistic. So, just sharing thoughts.
Thank you.
So as you see, the discussion that we just have here, times 350 school districts.
Woohoo! No, it's just good to know where everybody else is thinking, on each resolution. So thank you, everybody, for giving your thoughts. It'll be interesting, and I'll let you know.
Well, thankfully, it's at home. You'll be sitting on your couch with a drink.
I will be at home. I found that out. I realize now that I can register, but It is remote, but they only put it in their bulletin. It's not in any of the conference material, but I have to email this particular person to get the link, so I will do that.
And just like DESC, MASC sends you 3 different pamphlets with different information.
Conflicting information, perfect.
And it's not on their website. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the committee business for DEI research. This is one of our goals. And we are creating a folder. I'm just working with my IT professional. Because if we want to put links in there or anything like that, we have to work with the IT people here because they may not want links to go into the folders because of viruses or whatever. So I'm just trying to figure out what it is we can do for you guys to, any DEI information that you want to have the committee look at, and this way we can share it all. So I am working on that. Did you want to say anything? Oh, okay. So that is what the update is on that. This year, it's mainly gathering information and getting as much information as we can. So as soon as I have the folder that everybody can start putting stuff in there for us to review and look at, I will send out an email to everybody. Does anybody have any questions? The next item on the report is the monthly report of the superintendent.
Thank you. So the first item in the report is a leadership change that we reported to you last month. So to my right, Kimberly Croto, as I had referenced, is leaving. That is not news.
Excuse me. I forgot that that was in your report. It was supposed to be in my chairperson's remark, but I forgot to put it on the agenda. So this is Kim's last meeting. Not to put you on the spot, but we are going to ask you for a speech. I personally have known Kim since my children were at SES, and I did have a child who struggled with literacy, and Kim was instrumental in getting things done for my own child. As you see with the MCAS, the literacy is above the state level, so I believe Kim has made it better with the time that she's been here. And I know she's leaving us to go and do what her passion is, and that's to continue to preach literacy to the world. I appreciate everything that you've done for Triton. You've worked your way up from a teacher to the assistant superintendent, and that's a great honor for yourself. We have a card and a gift for you, and you will be sorely missed.
She's blaming me. She had nothing to do with it.
So we do expect a speech now.
I just will say thank you to all of you for supporting the students and the teachers. Thank you.
Be careful so it doesn't bust off. And it's an easy care orchid. You just water it.
An easy care orchid.
I need that one.
All right, I'm going to take a picture of it now, and we'll progress monitor it over the course of the year. And then we'll, so this is the baseline. Great. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. I said to Brian, it's bittersweet. I'm excited for a new chapter in my life, but I'm sad to be leaving all my friends. And I just have to share this one quick story. When I was, the first meeting that I came to, that I attended, I was very, very nervous. And I still get nervous today. But you had asked for a vote. And I didn't realize that we didn't vote. So I did one of these, and then I looked around, and I saw Christopher give me one of his looks, and I was like this. And I just was hoping that nobody saw that, but I've learned a lot. So Anna, when they take a vote, you don't vote. It's just them, okay?
So.
And just so you know, I remember that.
Yeah, but thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
So as you said, Kim will be very missed. She has been here a long time, big shoes to fill, but I can't see her right now through an orchid. But just to clarify, that's big. So Dr. Anna Bates, you know Anna has been here for many years, a familiar face. Kim is handing the reins to curriculum and instruction to very, very capable hands. So just to clarify, Kim is done as of this Friday, next month, swapping seats. Anna won't be in the audience. She'll be sitting here where Kim is sitting and taking the reins moving forward. So over the course of this year then, we're going to assess the overall structure of our leadership team, the role of the assistant superintendent, the teaching and learning specific and student services specific. Take a look at that. And is this structure the right structure? Should we change the structure? Over the course of the last month and a half, we've gone, yes, no, maybe, well, maybe not. So it was definitely, okay, let's take a step back. Let's keep what we have in place. Anna will assume the role of interim assistant superintendent. And then there are 4, 5, 6 other individuals who are taking on some curriculum review cycle work to coordinate those folks who are in their field doing that work. So very capable hands. Again, not me to kick you out the door, but Anna taking over is a very positive thing for Triton as well. So I want to celebrate that and welcome Anna. Dr. Bates, thank you. The rest of my report, I think, is pretty straightforward. Not a lot in there, just an update on the case counts. You remember we are keeping the dashboard updated. We're not sending out messages as cases arise. Dealing with the Google Studio, Data Studio wizard over there, Paul Mayette, trying to figure out certain aspects of the data set to show individual lines when there's more than one case in a building. But every case we're showing individually so that we can show the actual impact. Any students that had to actually quarantine and leave the building, or any students who are in the test or staff who are in a test and stay protocol. So we'll continue to use that protocol. We've had the cases have been primarily at the elementary level. It's not shocking given the fact that students are largely unable to be vaccinated at this point. There hasn't been any in-school transmission, so it's ebbed and flowed. We started the school year quiet for the first couple days and then had one every day for a while, and then we've had some breaks. We had a case today that you can see on the dashboard. We haven't had one since last week. So it's definitely slow, and there is no in-school transmission. We've only had, since the first, we have not had anyone in the test and stay protocol since the first week of school. So that is, we do now have a partnership with CIC Health that we've been fighting with the department for 2 months. We finally got a resource through a third-party contractor called the Judge Group out of Philadelphia or somewhere in Pennsylvania. Have been a phenomenal resource. Our students, 6th graders, going off to camp on November 1st, all through the state, all at their cost, providing full PCR pooled testing 3 days prior to departure on that Friday. They'll then leave on Monday. They're actually going to do a double swab, so they'll pool on Friday. Any pool that, if a pool tests positive, they can rerun the second swabs to identify the individual. They're then going to test all the students the morning of with a Binax Rapid before they get on the bus. So it's been a great resource now over the last couple of weeks, now that they have that new partnership in place with the Judge Group. Mask requirements, we did talk about this at the policy subcommittee earlier, but just to provide I provided some information that I don't think is new news to anyone, that the mask mandate was extended to November 1st. Today in a call, the commissioner reported that it would be in the next week or two, most likely on Friday, October 29th at about 7:55 p.m. We'll have some new information, but the mandate is in place through November 1st, but as of the 15th, which is this Friday, if we reach an 80% vaccination rate at any school, we can, don't have to, but we can allow those who are vaccinated to remove masks. As we discussed, as everyone has been discussing, and we discussed with P&A tonight, that certainly sets up a very challenging precedent to document and monitor those who are not vaccinated actually wearing their masks. So at this point, One thing I clarified in here, the department has very clearly confirmed that this middle school, high school, central office campus is one school because of shared transportation and some facilities. So this whole campus would have to be at 80% students and staff combined before that could be considered. But regardless, you've heard in the news, Hopkinton High School is the first one who's going to take that step. It's once you hit 80%, you then petition the department and provide all the backup information on how we documented and confirmed all those vaccination rates. So it's certainly not, you hit 80 and woo, you run to the races and take your mask off. There's certainly a process, but at this point, we have, I don't have an update for you. It's small percentage. The last I talked to the nurses, we were in the staff documented ranged 50 to 60%. Some higher in some schools, a little lower in some schools. And then students, obviously at the elementary is non-existent, and at the middle school and high school, it was in the 40s, 50s. So I have had conversations with parents who have said, my child's vaccinated, but I'm not going to provide you the documentation because I think you should be wearing masks. So there's certainly lots of discussion still to be had. There's nothing, there's no silver bullet here where when the clock strikes November 1st or we hit that 80%, that things automatically change. So we're taking the approach of, for the foreseeable future, it's a voluntary request from parents. And as we approach that threshold, we'll take that information to you and say, we're ready to take the next step, at least get the authorization that allows you to have the discussion about changing your policy. I should pause on that. Any questions of that?
Thanks, Linda. My question is this, because I've heard this from quite a few parents. The vaccination spot on the dashboard, when do you think that's going to start showing data? When do you think you'll be in a position to actually start putting data on that? Because I know there are a lot of people who said, A, do you have numbers? And I said, no, we don't have numbers yet. And when is that going to be something that's trackable, that we can see sort of the progression that's happening?
So we are collecting it on a voluntary basis now, so we could put data there. The next question is, how do you want to track that? I think when we talked about this, it makes sense to track it by school, because that is going to be the mechanism by which we can remove masks. So it would be each of the elementaries and then the middle school, high school campus. So we are at a point where if we want to talk about developing that, we have the data. It's then, I would say, we don't want to update it daily, but if we're updating that on a Friday afternoon as well, we are in a place where we're able to do that now if you want to start having that on the...
Brian, we would have to go in and do the validation on anything that's attested to before you could include that in the numbers, right? Because we have that differentiation of showing your vaccination card versus an attestation. The attestations have to...
Yeah, can you... So the attestation, so there's an attestation that we provide to the department when we hit the 80%. What we're doing is we're asking families and staff to provide a copy of the vaccination card. Nurses are then verifying it through MIIS. So anything that goes into where you have a tracking system within Aspen, when it goes into Aspen, it's fully verified. Yeah. Yeah, so that's a good question. We talked about that at the P&A. A lot of districts did a survey. Are you vaccinated? Are you unvaccinated? Do you intend to? I don't believe there's any value in that because it's an opinion, or it's not opinion, but there's no way to prove that. So we are, at this point, even though it's not required, requiring proof of vaccination, not someone saying, I do have it without proof.
I'll just clarify on my kind of the origins of this. I don't know if you feel like the data is incomplete. I don't know that it needs to go up right now, but I think there needs to be an update of some sort because it's kind of moved into this perpetually pending sort of status where people are like, they check in there to look at cases and it's still a blank.
I don't think it's a bad thing to put that data set up because it prompts the next discussion, right? If people who want to move towards 80% see that it's at 40, then there's going to be motivation to say, come on, people, provide your vaccination proof. Likewise, there might be people who feel differently, but I think if we're ready to, that's been a Yumi and Paul thing. If we want to develop that, we're ready. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And I do think it's a good discussion point. It keeps the conversation moving. Yep.
I just wanted to say I agree with Narissa. I think that there are some parents that are starting to look and see, you know, when we're going to start reporting that data out. So I think, you know, we should start including it and having the discussions about the data. So.
Does anybody else have an opinion of whether we have Brian start putting data in?
All right. So it sounds like we're good with that. So Narissa, Paul, we'll figure that out. I certainly can provide the data. I can't provide the Google brains. Add it to the list.
And I want to thank Paul for all your time on that.
Yes. Continuing on the report, technology transitions, just to let you know, you saw in the personnel report that our network administrator has given notice in one of the technicians. The network administrator is actually going to be shifting. Official resignation is in December with a 90-day notice. They're actually going to be shifting to a part-time outside of school hours to keep them on board and still able to move on to the other role. We're working with a company to backfill network management on a contract basis. And then we'll, if not today, we'll have the other technician position posted to be able to replace. But just so that you just call attention to that, because it is two members of the technology department, which is both going on to other opportunities. And certainly we don't begrudge people who make choices to go on to pursue other opportunities, even when we'd like to. That was well played, huh, Linda? Thank you. On page 4 there, just it's the document I referred to that's now on the website in its entirety. I wanted to include that as part of this report, so it got sent out to everyone. So, and then the monthly personnel report is included as well. Any questions on the personnel report? Or anything in that MSBA facilities assessment document? All right. Thank you.
Make a motion to receive and file the monthly report of the superintendent of schools.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Next item on the agenda is the approval of superintendent goals.
So you have my draft goals. They should be there. Everyone is able to get to them. I actually re-uploaded them. I don't know if anyone, when did it? It was earlier today as I was rereading lots of grammatical errors. Apparently I did not include the edited version. So obviously my goals are not things that I can do all myself as the superintendent. Often it's the success of the district is my ability to lead and do and work with incredible individuals who are very capable, many of whom are to my right. So that wasn't a dig at you, Kim.
Oh, okay.
Okay, good. Everyone else is right as well. So as far as student learning goal, I also want to make sure that my goals are aligned to the district strategy, obviously. And so I have for you the under each goal has the alignment to the 5 conditions for success, and which of those that I believe the goal specifically targets. So my student learning goal is to continue to develop and refine the instructional opportunities and experience for our students, specifically those that may have been impacted by the pandemic closure, and to provide the supports and services necessary to ensure their success. So the 3 areas we've focused on is the Ellen Bloom's report. It's now several years old. Obviously, Shannon Nolan is new in this role and has been doing a lot of assessing and discussing and meeting. And so there's certainly things that were part of that report that were recommendations that we're going to continue to review. And obviously, Shannon is doing her own review of special education services across the board. So that is something that we had committed to paying close attention to, and we are going to continue to pay close attention to. The You heard from Cara Briley this evening. Mental health and wellness in general is a priority that we have to all have. And so certainly my role to support her, to make sure that we're supporting those decisions and supporting whether that be personnel or financing or just mental capacity and brain energy to make sure that we are focusing as best we can on overall wellness of students and staff. And then also we through ourselves, very positive, we went from how do we figure out a one-to-one Chromebook initiative to we have a Chromebook initiative using short-term funds based on a short-term need. As of right now, we've re-handed out Chromebooks, I believe, to grades 3 and up. Is that right? And so K to 2, where there's lease cycles, we still don't have the PCs in. But over the course of this year, we're going to work through what the actual needs are, having an opportunity to take a step back and say, this is what we want, not just because this is what we need to be able to have students remote in a pandemic setting, but is the device at a kindergarten classroom different than a device at a 7th grade classroom or in a high school physics class? So by the end of this year, or even by the time we get to budget season, we'll have a plan in place to make that next step moving forward and to have a sustainable cycle to keep that moving forward. So the intended outcomes are there. And then as far as evidence, we certainly have, by the end of this year and through the fiscal 23 budget process, to be able to make any determinations for changes to special education, whether that's programming or staffing, and then continue to see what you saw in part tonight. A lot happened since Cara took the reins in July, and I know that she'll continue that effort and energy moving forward, and I'm working with her. And then that one-to-one plan is completed and provisioned during the fiscal 23 budget process. Any questions on goal 1, or we'll just go through each of the goals and then all at once? So goal 2, professional practice goal, to improve the overall perception and understanding of the value of a full pre-K through 12 Triton education and to develop a full understanding of that role that addresses the needs for repairs and improvements at the middle and high school campus plays into that process. We have talked a long time about, or for a long time, about marketing. And we have a, obviously Katie Lakey does a great job with our we call it PR media, and she's on Facebook and engaging and all that, but we've never spent time and funding on a true marketing campaign and a true marketing consultant and effort. And I think it's time. I think we certainly, districts as a whole are struggling because there are so many options, and especially when you have the ability to go and choose another public district. Obviously, last year didn't help anyone. But in specific, with the middle school, high school project, regardless of the outcome or regardless of the path, we need the investment of the community in their interest and understanding that there is a value to start at Triton when you come in preschool and finish at Triton when you walk across the stage as a senior. And I have so many conversations with people who say, I was so scared, I come into the middle school, people told me it was going to be awful, and they're like, my gosh, it's amazing, the teachers, the things that happen. Doesn't mean there's things we can't improve that are actual things that need to change, but a lot of it has to do with marketing and selling Triton and communication and making sure we're effectively communicating the middle school and high school opportunities at the elementary level. So across the board, that is one of my goals this year, that by the end of this year, we will have a marketing strategy in place. And that is something that I will bring to you through the budgeting process, because I don't think it's hey, let's use some COVID funds and fund it. It's something that we need to commit to long-term. To help us change the perception of the district, because we can do all that we want to do and do on a daily basis and put our time and energy into as far as improving instruction and the services and the opportunities for students, but we're not marketing professionals, and we need someone who can say, yes, but say it this way, yes, do this. So that will be an effort as we go through the year, and then also for this project on this campus specifically, that by the time we get to the end of this year and budgeting season, that we have a plan in place about what our next steps are going to be, which is, as you said, Linda, is going to be challenging. Lots of challenging discussions ahead. As far as the district improvement goal, yep.
I just have a comment that just having the teachers here to discuss the intern program, I think is a testament to you that you're allowing the teachers to think outside the box to help market that as well. I think that's a great way to get teachers motivated to come up with different things to engage our students.
Absolutely. And so the final goal, district improvement, we've been talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I've been having conversations with, her name is Nadia Brock from Essential Partners, about brainstorming how we start this work. And I think I've said it to you, and we said it at the workshop, if we don't start it well, it won't start well. So we need to make sure that we're broaching the harder discussions of diversity, equity, and inclusion in a way that allows us to, where do we start? What's the low-hanging fruit, for lack of a better term? Essential Partners is focused on the process, engaging communities, individuals, classrooms in a dialogue that's effective. They don't provide content specifically. I've also been chatting with a gentleman named Michael Eatman, that I've been a part of a couple different meetings with him. It is an incredibly engaging and powerful way about him in talking about specifically race and culture. As a black man, so disarming. To be a white man in the same room and having a conversation, oftentimes it's hard to sit across and feel like I can engage. And he was a tremendous resource. So haven't figured out yet how we can work with him, but I've set up a time to sit with him and talk about how we can work with him about starting this work. Again, this is not a goal that by June of 22 we've arrived. We've started the work. We're going to have an equity team established by the winter. That work is going to continue into the spring. And I'll have more as the year goes on, but the goal is that we've made progress towards identifying and setting a plan moving forward by the end of the school year. Those are my goals. Any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the goals of the superintendent for the 2021-2022 school year as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is policy updates and information.
That's me. So we met, policy and advocacy met today for two purposes. The first was to review the information sent from Desi, and Brian already talked about a lot of that conversation with the masking and such. But we also have from the schools a draft cell phone policy. Oops, I just clicked the wrong thing on my computer. So we have a draft policy. The policy as drafted and put forward, Patrick presented it to us tonight, essentially has that personal devices at the high school are away, but that they are sometimes the appropriate learning tool and may be used at the appropriate time when prompted by a teacher. At the elementary and middle school levels, personal digital devices are prohibited by default, but with advance notice. Classroom teachers can notify students or their families that a device will be needed in the classroom so that those students and their families can prepare accordingly. So this came to us today. You should see it in board docs. And we are, I think at this point, asking this to be read as a first reading tonight. So I guess I would love to take questions on that.
If I can just add, so obviously it's very atypical to have a first reading of a document that you are just probably now looking at and setting eyes on for the first time. So if it gets tabled, there's not an issue with that. I know this has been something, I wanted to be respectful of the fact that this has been something we've been talking about for several years. So I didn't know the urgency of the committee. We certainly are interested in getting this in place as soon as possible. So if you're willing to read this or approve this as a first reading, obviously it's going to come back next month. You can ask for more information, we can have further discussion, but it will allow a path forward to get this in place sooner rather than later. I see people looking for it. Are you able to see it under public content? So if you hit refresh, it should be under policy updates and information, not under subcommittee reports. There should be an attachment there now. And while people are looking, we should also note that it still says cell phone policy because I didn't want to change the agenda. But we ultimately arrived at, I think we spent more time talking about the title than we did about the policy itself. But the policy on the use of personal electronic devices. I can tell you, so Patrick came tonight because this was drafted out of the high school, and then it obviously was tweaked because at the middle school and the elementary, it's much more restrictive. At the elementary, don't let me see it, you don't need it. At the middle school, the default is it's away, but also like TV video production. At the middle school, there's a class. Likely the teacher's going to say, you always bring your phone to class, or in a music class, to tune an instrument, you can bring your phone to class. But the default is it's away. The piece that I know Patrick spoke about this evening was it's the earbuds. So this policy prohibits the use of earbuds unless it's for an instructional purpose. So it is very unconventional. I will acknowledge that, and if it gets tabled, that's not a problem. Because we talked about it tonight and the committee approved it tonight, the subcommittee recommended to approve it tonight, I certainly wanted to at least put it on the agenda to attach it and have the committee decide how they want to proceed.
So can we change fourth paragraph down where it starts at the high school? Can we make that the second sentence and have all devices be the first sentence? Of that paragraph? I'd like to start it that way because it's confusing as I read it, and I think if the default is the devices are going to be put away, then that should be first. And then the second sentence, at the high school, the use of personal devices in the classroom is at the teacher's discretion. I just think that's a better way to read it, to write it.
So the reason it's specific is because that paragraph is specific to the high school. The next paragraph is elementary and middle.
Right.
So, I mean, we could achieve that through headings, right? I mean, like the key is that paragraph is about the high school. So I'd want to start by saying this is the high school.
Okay, well, you can say at the high school, all devices will begin the class.
Yep.
And then just the second sentence would be the use of personal digital devices in the classroom is to be at the teacher's discretion. That would be the second sentence. I just think it reads better. I think it sends a better message.
Anyone else have any comments on that paragraph, agree or disagree?
I don't have comments on that paragraph, but I'm uncomfortable with approving this as a first reading tonight without having a chance to go through it thoroughly.
Does anybody else have an issue voting on this as a first reading? Because even if we vote on it as a first reading, we're still going to come back to it next month, right?
Yeah, you have to have a second reading. You could have 7 readings if you wanted to. Yeah, I mean, but the traditional is a first reading and then a second reading is the finalization of the policy, the formal adoption of the policy.
So just to clarify, the policy and advocacy committee met today and reviewed this today in their meeting. So they've all read this and approved it to be here.
Correct, yep.
So I think given that, I'm okay with approving it as a first reading and moving it forward because this is something we have talked about for at least 3 years, I think, maybe more.
And it doesn't mean that,
And I'm not saying I want to rush it, but at the same time, I also want to get this moving.
It also doesn't mean that
Most
you
I've
have to do
seen.
sequential months, right?
Yeah.
So November, you could just not take any action, have further discussion and not take any action, refer it. I mean, I feel like so Paul's question or comment about changing language, that should go back to policy subcommittee, right? Isn't that the process? So I feel like there should be, if you approved it as a first reading, or maybe it isn't, or, yeah, no, I think that would argue that it shouldn't be a first reading. The first reading should be in November, when you have an opportunity to have everyone read thoroughly, provide full comments, right? Not more than just that paragraph, provide full comments on the full context of it, and bring it back. So either way.
Either way.
But if we approved it as a first reading, people could still review it
Absolutely.
and give feedback to the chair of the policy committee. And I'm of the same mindset as Maureen. We gave this task to the policy subcommittee. They reviewed it, and they suggested to push it to the full committee. We're not approving it as the final document, but I think we could review it and send comments or whatever to the policy subcommittee. They could look at it again and
this is a question, I don't know the OML answer to this. Can individual committee members submit comments to Paul as the chair of the policy subcommittee that he then brings? Because we meet, I'm assuming we do the same thing in November. If this is a first reading, we would bring all the comments to the policy and advocacy subcommittee on November, is it November 10th? Whatever the November meeting is at 5:30, bring it back for edits. Or we could do it sooner than that, right? We don't have to meet the day before, so if we
Right, I
could
would-
meet the week prior,
yes.
and then that gives you time to see the edits.
Yeah, I think it would create a problem if you keep meeting an hour before a meeting, because then it doesn't give us a chance to read any edits that have been submitted over the next month. So I would suggest changing the meeting time.
Yeah, I'm happy to take any individual feedback and bring those to the Policy and Advocacy Subcommittee, and maybe we can meet November 3rd, the week ahead or something like that, so that it's out before the packet comes out.
Yep. Because I just want to acknowledge the work that they did today on it, and
Absolutely.
so.
So-
Can I-
So can I say, I would suggest set yourselves a deadline, that if you said, like 2 weeks from today, October 27th, by that point, submit comments to Paul, and then we'll schedule a meeting sometime between the 7th and the 3rd, and that would give us a week prior to the meeting, and then it could get into the packet. If it's the 3rd, that's the conference, but if we did it remotely, I could chime in from there.
Could I have a motion to accept the policy cell phone, what's the name of the policy?
The use of personal electronic devices.
Yes, as a first reading.
I'll make that motion.
Could I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? We have one abstaining or no?
No, I'm a no.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is subcommittee reports. So Policy and Advocacy Subcommittee. I think
I think you just got it.
You did
it. We discussed the updated guidance from DESE. We talked about that a little bit. I think we talked particularly about what the 80% threshold means, and how we're validating that, which has already been mentioned, and also that DESE included that even were we to lift the mask mandate after reaching 80%, it would still be mandated for unvaccinated people in the buildings to wear a mask, and whether that's enforceable or not. And Patrick in particular expressed that he did not see how that would be enforceable. Our next meeting is to be determined, as we will move it up so that we have any edits to the draft personal digital draft of the electronic devices policy prior to November 5th.
Finance Subcommittee? Okay.
I don't know why Kyle's laughing, because I always gift this time to him. So to you, sir.
Yeah. Absolutely. So
She's adjusting.
we went over the standard reports for the month of August. We had an update on the year-end closing, and then we discussed the next steps for the long-term financial and capital planning. Part of which was described in that one-page document with 2 annexes.
Thank you. The next item is correspondence, and we do not have any correspondence. The next item on the agenda is executive session. The school committee is expected to enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Triton Regional School Teachers Association and Cafeteria Workers Association, as the chair has determined that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining of the district. The committee is expected to enter executive session and to return to open session. So we have to take a vote, right?
Yeah, it's a, yeah. Cafeteria Workers Association to return to open session.
I'll second that motion.
We have a roll call vote. Paul Mayette? Yes. Aaron? Paul Lees? Yes. Paul Goldner?
Yes.
Caitlin? Yes. Narissa?
Yes.
I'm a yes.
And I'm a yes.
Susanna?
Yes.
Thank you.